The stones of the citadel were cold against my back, seeping through the thin fabric of my servant's dress. I pressed myself deeper into the shadowed alcove, a forgotten speck in the river of fear flowing through the great hall. My heart was a frantic bird beating against the cage of my ribs. I shouldn't be here. A rejected omega, an outcast, standing in the sacred space of the royal wing, was a crime punishable by exile, or worse. But the scent of his agony was a hook in my soul, pulling me forward through the hidden kitchen passages I knew so well. "Make way for the high healer!" A guard's voice cut through the murmurs, sharp and commanding. The crowd parted like a wave before a ship, and High Healer Kale strode past. His robes were the color of fresh blood, and his face was a mask of grim duty. He was the 5th healer to answer the summons this week. The others had left with their tails between their legs, their magic useless against the affliction devouring our Alpha King from the inside out. Through the forest of bodies, I saw him, Kalen, the Alpha King of the Silver Veil Howlers. The most powerful wolf in all the northern territories, brought to his knees on the cold marble floor. His massive frame was racked with tremors, muscles coiled so tight I thought they would snap. Dark, pulsing veins crawled across his chest and arms, a grotesque map of his suffering. This was not a simple illness. This was a war being fought within his own skin. "Papa," the small, clear voice pierced the heavy silence, and my breath caught in my throat. Little Princess Ilara, no more than 6 winters old, strained against her governess's grip. She hadn't spoken a word since her mother's tragic passing a season ago. Not a single sound, until now. "Let me go! Papa needs me!" she cried, her small voice thick with tears. High Healer Kale knelt, his hands igniting with the familiar golden light of his healing magic. The air hummed with power. But the moment his glowing fingers touched Kalen's fevered skin, the Alpha King's body arched violently off the floor. A sound tore from his throat, a raw, shattered howl of pure torment that was neither human nor wolf. But something born of both and trapped between. "By the great moon!" Kale gasped, recoiling as if burned. His wolf? It is tearing him apart. It attacks any magic I try to use. It no longer recognizes a healer's touch. Then make it recognize. Prince Theron, the king's younger brother, stepped forward. His silver hair was impeccably styled, his eyes cool and calculating. I'd always felt a chill in my bones when he passed me in the halls during my brief time as a scullery maid. "You are the most renowned healer in the realm. Do your duty." "I cannot heal what I cannot touch," Kale replied, his voice trembling with a frustration he could not hide. His wolf sees all magic as a threat. It is a madness I have never encountered. "How long?" Farron's voice was steady, too steady for a man watching his brother die. "Hours," Kale admitted softly. "Perhaps less." A collective gasp of despair swept through the hall. My own eyes stung with unexpected tears. I had only served in the citadel for a few months before my rejection, but I had seen King Kalen's strength, his fierce devotion to his people. He was a good Eltha. He did not deserve this end. There must be something we haven't tried. The beta, a grizzled warrior named Rorik, stepped forward, his scarred face etched with desperation. We have tried everything. Hale's composure finally broke. Moon-blessed elixirs, purging rituals, even phoenix tears. Nothing can reach his wolf without sending it into a deeper frenzy. Another violent convulsion seized the king's body. This time, when his head flung back, his eyes, wild amber gold orbs, locked directly onto my hiding place in the shadows. My blood turned to ice. It was impossible. He couldn't see me, but he did. And in that one searing moment, I didn't just see the madness. I saw a plea, a desperate, soul-deep cry for help that didn't travel through the air, but through something deeper, something that resonated in the very marrow of my bones. My hands began to tremble, a familiar cursed tingling awakening beneath my skin, the same tingling that had marked me as different since childhood, that had gotten me labeled cursed and led to my ultimate rejection. It flared to life now, a strange warmth spreading up my arms. No, I whispered to myself, the sound lost in the tense atmosphere. Not here. Please, not now. But his gaze held mine, unwavering. His lips, cracked and bloodied, formed a single silent word. Please. And then I was moving. I don't remember deciding to step out. My body simply acted, pulled by that bone-deep instinct, by the strange energy humming under my skin. I stepped from the shadows into the torchlight. The reaction was immediate. A wave of shock and disgust rippled through the hall as every eye landed on me. I felt their stares like physical blows. The outcast? The wolfless one. The cursed Omega. What is this creature doing here? Prince Theron's voice dripped with venom. Guards, remove this filth at once. Wait. The word tore from my throat, a ragged, broken sound. I had not spoken in public since the day of my rejection, when my silence had sealed my fate. My voice was a ghost of what it once was, but it carried in the stunned silence. I think I can help. High Healer Kale let out a bitter, disbelieving laugh. You, a rejected Omega with no wolf, no training, no magic? You think you can succeed where the finest healers of the realm have failed? My legs felt like water, but I forced them to carry me forward. The crowd fell back, their horrified fascination creating a path for me. I could hear their hissed whispers. The cursed girl, she brings ill omens, abomination. I knelt beside the Alpha King. Up close, the devastation was even more horrifying. Sweat soaked his skin, and the dark veins pulsed with a malevolent life of their own. He was burning up, his life force being consumed by this internal battle. Do not touch him, Kale warned sharply. His wolf will rip you to pieces. But my hand was already moving, drawn by that same inexplicable pull. My fingertips, pale and trembling, brushed against the scorching skin of his arm. The world exploded. A shockwave of pure silver energy erupted from the point of contact, throwing everyone back a step. The torches flickered and dimmed. The Alpha King's body went utterly, completely still. A tremor ceased. The agonized tension drained from his muscles, and his eyes snapped open. They were no longer the confused, pained amber from moments before. They were pure, blazing wolf gold, clear and focused. His hand, swift as a striking serpent, shot up and locked around my wrist. His grip was like iron, unbreakable. His voice, when he spoke, was a low, primal growl that vibrated through the very floor. It was the voice of his wolf, ancient and absolute, mine. His canines elongated, sharp and deadly. Before I could gasp, before anyone could move, he pulled me down. A sharp, searing pain erupted at the junction of my neck and shoulder. The pain was blinding, a white-hot brand. But beneath it, woven through the agony, was something else. A profound sense of connection, of a missing piece slotting into place deep within my soul. He had claimed me. When he finally released me, his eyes were clear amber, fully human, and filled with a dawning, horrified awareness. My blood stained his lips. "What have I done?" he whispered, his voice raw from days of screaming. Blasphemy! Prince Theron's roar shattered the stunned silence. He has claimed a rejected Omega. The curse has driven him truly mad. Seize her! She has bewitched the king. No one touches her. Kalen's voice was quiet, but it carried the full, undeniable weight of an alpha's command. He struggled to sit up, and without thinking, I reached out to steady him. The moment my skin touched his again, the black veins on his arm faded, retreating by a fraction. "Impossible," High Healer Kale breathed, his eyes wide with shock. "The curse, it recedes. How is this possible?" "Witch," someone in the crowd shouted. "I'm not," I tried to protest. My voice failed me, shrinking back to a frightened whisper. "Papa." Elora broke free and ran to us, skidding to a halt before me. Her wide amber eyes, so like her father's, looked at me not with fear, but with wonder. She pointed a small finger at me. "You have a pretty light." "What light?" Farron demanded, his eyes narrowing. But Ilara was already reaching for my hand. The moment her small fingers touched mine, I gasped. I saw it through her eyes, a soft silver luminescence emanating from my skin, invisible to the adults, but clear as daylight to her innocent sight. "She makes the hurt go away," Ilara said, turning to her father. "Just like Mama used to." The hall erupted into chaos. Mentions of the late Queen Lyra, a mysterious woman Kalen had found dying in the woods and claimed against all tradition, were strictly forbidden. The rumors of her own strange abilities were a secret everyone knew, but no one spoke of. "Enough!" Kaelin commanded, and silence fell once more. He looked at me, his gaze intense, searching. "What is your name?" "Arya." I managed, hating the broken, fragile sound of my own name. "My name is Arya." "Arya," he repeated, and my name on his lips sounded like a vow. Then he looked out at his people, his strength returning with every second our skin remained connected. "This woman is my mate, chosen by my wolf in our darkest hour. Any who challenge this, challenge me." "Brother." Theron stepped forward, his face a mask of concerned reason, though I saw a flicker of something colder in his eyes. "You are not yourself. The curse has clouded your judgment. Once you are recovered, you will see the impossibility of this. A rejected Omega cannot be our Luna Queen. Cannot?" Kaelin's eyes flashed with gold fire. "I am your Alpha. I decide what is possible in my kingdom." But even as he spoke the words, I felt a tremor run through him. The brief clarity was fading. The curse was fighting back, the black veins beginning to darken and advance once more. "My lord," High Healer Kael approached cautiously. "The claiming has stabilized you for now, but the root of the curse remains. May I examine the bond?" Kaelin gave a curt nod, though his grip on my arm tightened possessively. Kael's hands glowed with a gentle golden light as he held them over where we touched. His expression shifted from suspicion to sheer bewilderment. "This defies every law of nature I know," he murmured. "Her wolf! She has no wolf," Theron interjected. "That is why she was cast out. Born broken, wolfless." "She is not wolfless," Kael interrupted, his voice filled with awe. "Her wolf is not dead. It sleeps. It has been hidden so deep within her that our ceremonies could not detect it. But the Alpha's claim, it calls to it. It is trying to wake it. The world tilted around me. My whole life, I had been told I was a mistake, an abomination. The rejection ceremony at 16, when I stood under the full moon and failed to shift, had been the final, humiliating proof. To hear that my wolf was merely sleeping, it was a hope I had long since buried. "That is why," Kaelin said suddenly, his breathing growing labored again, "my wolf recognized what others could not see. You were never broken, Arya. You were waiting." His legs buckled, and we both sank to our knees. The dark veins surged across his skin like spilled ink, and a silent howl of agony echoed behind his eyes. "No!" I pressed both my hands to his chest, desperate. The tingling under my skin erupted into a blaze. And for a breathtaking moment, a flash of pure silver light flared between us. The veins retreated again, but not as far as before. "It is fighting her," Kael observed, his voice grim. "The curse recognizes her light as a threat." "Then we remove the threat," Theron said coldly, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "If you harm her," Kaelin's voice dropped to a deadly whisper, his claws extending, "I will tear out your throat myself." Brother or not, you prove my point. Farron gasped, taking a step back, genuine fear in his eyes. This violence, this lack of control, the council will never accept this. They will never accept her. As if summoned by his words, a deep, resonant horn blast echoed through the citadel. 3 long, solemn notes. The Council of Elders was convening. Perfect timing, Farron said, a tight, humorless smile on his face. They will settle this matter. They will see reason. Kaelin released a heavy breath, turning to me. Can you stand? I nodded, though my whole body trembled. The claiming bite on my shoulder throbbed with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. And through that new, fragile connection, I could feel the storm of his emotions. Pain, fury, and beneath it all, a fierce, desperate protectiveness that made my head spin. Papa, I'll help, Ilara said, grabbing my free hand. Together, the little princess and I supported the Alpha King as we turned to face the council. But as we moved, I heard Prince Theron lean close to one of his guards, his voice a venomous whisper. Send a raven to the Shadowfang Pack. Inform them we have found their escaped Omega. I am certain they will be eager to have her back. Ice flooded my veins, colder than the citadel stones. The Shadowfang Pack, the ones who had rejected me, who had tried to break me, if they came for me... Kaelin's hand found mine, his fingers lacing through mine. And through our new bond, I felt his promise solid as granite. No one will take you from me. But as we entered the vast, intimidating council chamber and saw the 5 ancient elders seated in judgment, their faces carved from stone and tradition, I feared that not even an Alpha King could stand against the combined weight of law, prejudice, and the army that was surely on its way. Elder Marcus, the eldest among them, stood slowly, his staff tapping on the floor. Kaelin of the Silvervale Howlers, you stand accused of violating sacred law by claiming a rejected Omega. The punishment for this transgression is... Wait! Alara's voice, clear and sharp, cut through the formal pronouncement. Look what happens when she lets go. Before anyone could stop her, the little princess yanked my hand away from her father's side. The effect was instant and horrifying. Kaelin collapsed as if struck, his body convulsing violently. The black veins surged across his skin like a tidal wave, and a choked, guttural howl was torn from his throat. Stop, I cried, breaking free from Alara and dropping to his side. But when I reached for him, my hands passed straight through his arm as if he were made of morning mist. No! I gasped, swiping at his form again. Finding nothing but cold, empty air. What is happening? I cried, my voice cracking with terror. The council's judgment has begun, Elder Marcus intoned, his voice devoid of all emotion. The sacred laws are absolute. An improper claiming must be severed. You are being removed from each other's reality. In moments, the bond will be as if it never existed. I watched in utter horror as Kaelin became more and more translucent. His mouth formed my name, but I could no longer hear the sound. The claiming mark on my shoulder burned as if dipped in acid. "Please," I begged, my broken voice barely a whisper. "You are killing him." "The Alpha King's death is a tragedy," Elder Marcus said coldly. "But the law is—" He never finished. Something deep within me, something older than memory, older than thought, roared to life. My vision washed in blinding, brilliant silver. And when I screamed, it was not with my broken human voice. It was the earth-shattering, soul-rending howl of a wolf that the world believed was dead. The howl that tore from my throat was not a sound of despair, but of pure, unbridled power. It was a declaration of existence. The very stones of the council chamber trembled in response, and the ancient stained glass windows that depicted the history of our kind splintered into 1,000 glittering shards, raining down like crystalline rain. My vision was bathed in silver. I could feel every wolf in the room, their hearts beating in a frantic, fearful rhythm. But most of all, I could feel him, Kalen. His essence, which had been fading into nothingness, solidified. His amber eyes, wide with stunned disbelief, locked onto mine. "What magic is this?" Elder Marcus breathed, his staff clattering to the floor as he took an involuntary step back. "That is no mere magic," whispered Elder Anya, the only female on the council, her aged face pale with awe. "That is the cry of a starlight wolf. They have been lost to legend for 500 years. I barely heard them. My entire being was consumed by the fire awakening inside me. It was my wolf, not dead, not sleeping, but hidden, waiting, and now roaring to the surface with 18 years of pent-up fury and power. I could feel her, a magnificent silver creature of moonlight and shadow, clawing her way into my consciousness, demanding to be free. Kalen's form became solid once more, the severing spell shattered by the force of my awakening. He pushed himself up, his gaze never leaving me, a dawning reverence in his eyes. "Stop the severance," High Healer Kale shouted, his voice strained. "You do not understand what you are dealing with. A bond with a starlight wolf cannot be broken by force. To try would unravel the very magic that holds our world together. The law is clear," Elder Marcus insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "A rejected Omega cannot—" "I was never rejected by the moon goddess." My voice rang out, strong and clear, no longer a broken whisper, but layered with the resonance of my wolf. The words came from a place of ancient knowing deep within my soul. I was concealed, protected, waiting for the one who would be worthy of my awakening, my true mate. "Convenient," Prince Theron sneered, though I saw the first flicker of genuine fear in his eyes. "You spin a pretty fairy tale, Omega, but you are still marked by the Shadowfang Pack's rejection. Their brand is upon you. Those like Emil did hurt me," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. I reached for the collar of my dress, pulling it down to reveal the ugly raised scar on my shoulder where the hot iron had seared my skin. But as the council watched, the scar began to shimmer. It shifted, melted, and reshaped itself into a new, intricate symbol, a crescent moon cradling a single brilliant star. The mark of Selene, Elder Anya gasped, falling to one knee. She bears the moon goddess's own sigil. Tricks and illusions, Theron snarled. Ryan who soared. She is a witch, and I will not let her enchant this council. His movement broke the stunned silence. Guards reached for their weapons, but I simply turned my silver gaze upon him. You, I said, and the word carried the weight of absolute truth. You are the poison in this court. You have been feeding your brother Wolfsbane laced with dark magic, slowly driving his wolf to madness. You wanted the throne for yourself. The accusation hung in the air, stark and terrifying. Lies. Theron's face was a mask of fury and panic. He lunged for me, but Kaelin was faster. In a blur of motion, the Alpha King was between us, his own claws out, his body a solid wall of protective fury. Is that why you insisted on personally overseeing my meals these past months, brother? Kaelin's voice was low and deadly. Your sudden concern for my well-being was touching. You have no proof, Theron spat. I do. The small, clear voice silenced everyone. Princess Ilara stepped forward, her little face set in a determined expression. Uncle Theron put the black drops in Papa's wine. I saw him. He said it was to make you strong, but it smelled bad, like the flowers in the dark forest that Mama told me never to touch. She held up a small, moonstone pendant that had been hidden beneath her dress. Mama's spirit blessed this pendant. She told me it holds 3 truths, to be used when they matter most. This is the first truth. Elora saw you. A child's testimony. Theron began, but Elder Anya cut him off. The testimony of a royal child who carries her mother's gift of sight is beyond dispute. She cannot lie about what she has witnessed. The other elders murmured amongst themselves, their rigid certainty crumbling. The foundation of Theron's plot was cracking before their eyes. If what the Starlight Wolf claims is true, Elder Marcus said slowly, his eyes fixed on me with a new, calculating light, then this falls under the Starlight Accord, not our common pack law. The Starlight Accord was destroyed, Theron said. A little too quickly. No, Elder Anya rose, her voice gaining strength. It was hidden, and I know where, but only a true Starlight Wolf can retrieve it. It is protected by trials that have killed every pretender who has ever attempted them. More delays. Theron's composure was fracturing. While you chase ghosts, our kingdom weakens. Our enemies gather at our gates because of the weakness you have shown. Because you have been whispering to them, Kaelin said. Understanding finally dawning in his exhausted eyes. You have been orchestrating this for a long time. But why, Theron? Was a crown truly worth our brotherhood? Before Theron could answer, a frantic horn blast echoed from the battlements. Not 3 notes, but 5, sharp, urgent and repeated. Invasion. A guard covered in dust and blood burst into the chamber. "My lords, the Shadowfang pack is at our gates. Alpha Vorlag demands the return of his rejected Omega." He has brought his entire war band. My heart turned to stone in my chest. Vorlag. The name was a nightmare given form. The Alpha who had wanted to claim me by force when I failed to shift, who had ordered me branded when I fought back. The memories rose like specters, choking me. "Perfect," Theron said, a grim smile twisting his lips. "Now we shall see, brother. Will you start a bloody war over a single cursed Omega? Or will you uphold the law and surrender her to her rightful Alpha?" Kalen pulled me against his side, his growl vibrating through my body. "I will paint these walls with the blood of any man who tries to take her from me." "And that," Elder Marcus said heavily, "is the heart of the problem. Your judgment is compromised, Kalen. The poison may have induced the madness, but this violent possessiveness, that is all you." He turned his ancient eyes to me. "You have one day. Retrieve the Starlight Accord and prove your lineage. If you fail, you will be handed over to the Shadowfang pack to avert a war, and the claiming will be dissolved." "She does not go alone," Kalen commanded. "She must," Elder Anya said, her expression sympathetic but firm. "The trials are for her bloodline alone. You cannot face them for her. But," she looked at Alora, "the Starlight Heir may accompany her. The path recognizes the blood of the last queen." "Absolutely not," Kalen's voice was raw. "I will not risk my daughter." "Papa?" Ilara said, her voice steady and far older than her 6 years. "Mama told me in a dream. She said when the Starlight Lady came, I must help her find the moon's book. She said it is my purpose. The pendant will protect me when the time is right." Through our bond, I felt Kalen's anguish, a torrent of fear and love so powerful it stole my breath. I squeezed his hand, trying to pour all my newfound strength into him. "Vorlag grows impatient," another guard yelled from the doorway. "He says if the Omega is not produced, he will storm the gates." "Stall him," Kalen ordered, his eyes still locked with mine. Tell him she is being prepared for transfer." That will buy us time. Elder Anya led us to a hidden archway behind the council thrones, etched with phases of the moon. "The path to the Accord begins here. But child," she looked at me with profound sadness, "many of your kind have attempted this. None have returned. What makes you think I will be different?" I asked, my moment of divine power fading, leaving only a frightened girl in its wake. "Because you are still standing after a direct claiming bite while your wolf was dormant," she replied. "That alone makes you the strongest Starlight candidate in living memory. But strength alone will not save you. The trials test 3 things: heart, spirit, and truth. Fail any one, and you will be lost forever." Kalen cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. His amber eyes burned with intensity. "Come back to me. Arya, I cannot lose you now. Not when I have just found the other half of my soul. I wanted to promise him I would. I wanted to be brave, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I leaned my forehead against his. Our breath mingling, our bond humming with a connection that felt as ancient as the stars themselves. Go, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Go now. I took Elara's small, trusting hand in mine. With one last look at my mate, I turned and plunged into the darkness of the hidden passage, leading his daughter toward a fate that could mean both our deaths. The passage swallowed us whole. The air grew cold and still, smelling of damp stone and ages long past. The only light came from strange phosphorescent moss that clung to the walls, pulsing with a soft, greenish glow that felt like a heartbeat from the earth itself. I could still feel Kaelin through our bond, a knot of rage, desperation, and fierce, unwavering love. It was a beacon in the overwhelming darkness, a tether to the world I was fighting to save. But with every step downward, the connection grew fainter, as if the ancient magic of this place was muffling it. I'm scared, Elara whispered, her small fingers tightening around mine. The brave facade she had shown the council was crumbling now that we were alone. So am I admitted, and the honesty seemed to strengthen my grip on her hand. But we are together, and we are doing this for your father, for your pack. That has to count for something. The corridor ended in a vast, circular chamber. It was utterly silent, the bears so still I could hear the blood rushing in my own ears. In the center of the chamber, 3 archways stood, each made of a different material and radiating a distinct energy. The first was framed with thorns so sharp they seemed to bleed shadow into the air. The second was woven from what looked like living, weeping willow branches, from which fell a continuous, silent rain of tears that vanished before they hit the floor. The third was a perfect, shimmering pool of mercury, its surface reflecting nothing. There were no markings, no instructions. Heart, spirit, truth, I murmured, remembering Elder Anya's words. But which is which? And which do we choose first? A voice, soft and melodic yet devoid of warmth, echoed from the very stones around us. The one who would be starlight must first prove the strength of her heart. Choose the path of courage. But know this, only one may walk it. The child must remain here. No, I said immediately, pulling Elara closer. I won't leave her. Then you both fail, the voice replied, implacable, and the Alpha King dies. The floor beneath us trembled slightly. Through our fading bond, I felt a spike of sharp, physical pain from Kaelin. The battle above had begun. Time was a luxury we did not have. I'll be okay, Arya, Elara said, her voice small but firm. She touched her moonstone pendant. Mama is with me. You have to be brave so we can save Papa. My heart felt like it was being torn in two. To leave this little girl alone in the darkness went against every instinct I possessed. But her eyes, so full of a wisdom beyond her years, held mine. She trusted me. She believed in me. I will come back for you, I promised. Kneeling before her, I swear it on my life. I know, she whispered, and she gave me a tiny, brave smile. Steeling myself, I turned towards the archway of thorns. As I approached, the sharp branches writhed like serpents, creating an opening just large enough for me to pass. I took a deep breath, stepped through, and heard the thorny vines snap shut behind me, sealing me in. I was in a long, dark tunnel. The air was thick with the scent of blood and fear. And then the whispers began. You are nothing, a rejected Omega, a curse. It was the voice of the Shadowfang Alpha who had branded me. You will never be one of us. You are broken, hissed the memory of my childhood tormentors. Your parents died because of you. Your very existence is a blight. This was a new voice, colder and more cruel than the others. Phantom hands clawed at me from the shadows. I saw visions of Kalen dying on the throne room floor. His eyes accusing me. I saw Ilara, lost and crying in the dark, calling my name. I saw the Silver Veil Pack slaughtered, their blood on my hands because I had failed. This was the trial of heart. It was not testing my physical courage, but my spirit's ability to withstand despair. The thorns were not just on the walls. They were in my mind, trying to shred my hope, my will to continue. I am not broken, I gasped, pushing forward against the psychic onslaught. I am Starlight. You are a lie, the voices shrieked in unison. You will fail him. You will fail them all. It's all you have ever done. I fell to my knees, the weight of their accusations crushing me. They were right. I had failed my pack. I had failed to shift. I had run away. What made me think I could save a king? But then, through the cacophony of fear, a single clear image came to me. Kalen's eyes when he first saw me. Not with disgust, but with recognition. Alara's hand, trusting and warm in mine. The feeling of my wolf, magnificent and powerful, awakening at my mate's call. No, I said, pushing myself back to my feet. My voice grew stronger with each word. I have been chosen. I have been claimed. My heart is not weak. It has been tempered by suffering, and it beats for them. For my mate, for my pack, for that child back there. I roared the last words, and a pulse of silver light exploded from me. The whispering voices screamed and fell silent. The phantom hands dissolved into smoke. The thorny walls ahead of me shuddered and crumbled to dust, revealing the end of the tunnel I had passed. I stumbled out of the tunnel, my body trembling with adrenaline, back into the circular chamber. Alara was exactly where I had left her, her eyes wide. You're shining, she breathed. I looked down at my hands. A soft, silver luminescence clung to my skin, the visible proof of my starlight nature. The trial had not broken my heart. It had forged it into something stronger. But there was no time to rest. The voice echoed again. The heart is proven. Now, the spirit must be tested. Choose the path of sacrifice. The weeping willow archway seemed to beckon. I looked at Ilara. This one is mine, she said. her small chin held high. Mama told me, the spirit tier path is for the air. I have to walk it alone. Before I could protest, she walked resolutely towards the archway. The weeping branches parted for her, and she disappeared into the gentle, sorrowful cascade. I was alone again. The chamber was silent, but I could feel the weight of the second trial beginning. This was not a test of facing my own fears soon, but of enduring the pain of others, of sacrifice. The walls of the chamber melted away, and I was no longer in a cave. I was standing in the throne room, but it was a memory, hazy and distorted. I saw Kalen, younger, his face etched with grief. He was kneeling over a woman with hair like spun moonlight, Queen Lyra. She was dying, her lifeblood, silver like mine, seeping into the stones. "Claim me," she was whispering. Her voice faint, not for love but for the child I carry. She will be needed when the starlight returns. The vision shifted. I saw my own mother, a woman whose face I had only seen in dreams, running through a dark forest. Her belly swollen with child, with me. A monstrous shadow pursued her. My father turned to fight, buying seconds with his life. "Hide her, wolf!" my mother screamed to a hooded figure. "Hide it so deep she will not know it herself. The shadow fangs must not find her." Another shift. I saw the consequences of my escape from the Shadow Fang pack. An old healer who had been kind to me being whipped for helping me. Other Omegas, my friends, being punished for my defiance. Their pain, their fear, their suffering, it washed over me. A tidal wave of guilt and sorrow. This was the sacrifice. It was not about dying. It was about living with the knowledge that my very existence had caused a ripple effect of pain. Could I bear it? Could I carry this weight without being crushed by it? Tears streamed down my face as I witnessed every moment of anguish I had indirectly caused. It was a torment far worse than the thorns. This was the truth of my life laid bare. "Yes," I sobbed, my voice cracking. "I will bear it. Their pain is my pain, but I will not let it define me. I will use it to make a world where no one has to suffer like this again." The vision ceased. The chamber returned. I was on my knees, emotionally ravaged, but unbroken. The mercury pool, the third archway, began to shimmer. The trial of truth awaited, and this time, I knew. Elara and I would have to face it together. The surface of the mercury pool rippled, not reflecting the cavern around us, but showing a different scene entirely. I saw Elara. She was in a grove of crystalline trees, each one humming with a soft, mournful song. She was not crying. She stood very still, her small hand pressed against the trunk of the largest tree, her eyes closed in concentration. She was sharing her spirit, her innocence, with the sorrow trapped within the grove. It was her trial of sacrifice, giving of her own light to heal something ancient and broken. As I watched, the image in the pool shifted, showing the third archway from the other side. It was not a pool of liquid, but a gateway of pure, solid light. And standing before it was me. or rather, a perfect, dark reflection of me. Her eyes were not silver, but voids of deepest night, and a cruel smile played on her lips. "Hello, sister," the shadow area said, her voice a chilling mimicry of my own. "I have no sister," I said, rising to my feet, my own silver light flaring in response to her darkness. "Don't you?" she purred, stepping through the gateway of light, which solidified into a mirror behind her. "What about the twin you felt in your mother's womb? The one whose soul was bound to yours before you were even born? The one the shadow fangs kept when you escaped?" Her words struck me with the force of a physical blow. A twin? A flicker of a memory, a feeling of another presence, a shared heartbeat in the darkness. It surfaced from the deepest part of my soul. It felt true. "You lie," I whispered, but my conviction wavered. "Am I?" The shadow gestured, and the mirror showed a young woman in a dim stone cell. She was my mirror image, identical in every way, but for the dead. Hopeless look in her eyes, and the faint, ugly brand of rejection still visible on her shoulder. She was heavily pregnant. "Her name is Lyra," the shadow said, savoring my shock. "Named for the late queen." In mockery, Alpha Vorlag believed he had the starlight heir. He broke her, but he could never wake her wolf. He kept her, hoping her bloodline would still give him powerful offspring. But now that he knows you are the true starlight, awakened and claimed, he will come for you with everything he has, and he will kill her. The vision in the mirror showed Vorlag, his face a mask of brutal rage, backhanding the girl, Lyra, my sister. "When I have the other one, I won't need you or your brat." Rage, white hot and pure, exploded within me. "No, yes," the shadow hissed, slinking closer. "That's it. Feel the anger. It is your birthright. You could have such power." "Arya, you could crush Vorlog, take back your sister, rule beside your Alpha King, not as a symbol, but as a true queen of night and terror. All you have to do is embrace the shadow within. Embrace me." She was the embodiment of the easy path, the path of fury and domination. The promise of saving everyone through sheer, terrifying power was seductive. "Join with me," she whispered, her dark eyes gleaming. Together, we would be unstoppable. We could have vengeance for all the pain you have suffered, for all the pain your sister suffers now. I looked at my dark reflection. I saw the temptation there, to never be weak again, to never be a victim, to make them all pay. But then I thought of Kalen. I thought of the love in his eyes, a love that saw my light, not my darkness. I thought of Alara, whose spirit was so pure she could heal crystalline trees with her compassion. I thought of my wolf, a creature of starlight, not shadow. This was the trial of truth. The truth of who I was and who I would choose to be. "You are not my shadow," I said, my voice steadying. "You are my fear. You are the lie. That power must be cruel to be effective. I reject you." I reached out not to strike her, but to touch the mirror. my fingers glowing with soft silver light, pressed against the cold surface. "I choose light," I whispered. "I choose love." The shadow aria screamed, a sound of shattering glass and dying echoes. She fractured into 1,000 pieces, and the mirror dissolved into a shower of harmless, glittering dust. On the other side, Ilara stood, her hand outstretched as well. She had completed her trial at the same moment. Her eyes met mine, and she smiled. "You found the truth," she said. "We both did," I replied. The circular chamber dissolved around us. We were no longer underground. We stood in a library that seemed to be carved from a single massive geode. The walls were crystalline, and in the center, on a pedestal of moonlight, rested a book. Its cover was of night sky, embroidered with constellations that actually twinkled. The Starlight Accord. As one, we approached it. I could feel its power, ancient and benevolent, humming in the air. "We have to hurry," Ilara said, her smile fading. "Papa, he's getting weaker." I could feel it too. The bond was a thin, frayed thread. The pain on the other end was a constant, dull roar. I reached for the book. The moment my fingers touched the cool, starlit cover, knowledge flooded into me. Not words on a page, but understanding directly imprinted on my soul. I saw the history of the Starlight Woths, peacemakers and guides. I saw the laws that governed our unique bond with alphas. And I saw the ritual I needed, the Starlight Cleansing, a rite that used the power of a true mate bond to purify poison and break dark magic. But I also saw the cost. To purify a poison this deep, I would have to draw it into myself, trusting my Scarlight nature to transform it. It was a terrible risk. "Arya, look," Ilara said, pointing at the crystalline wall. It had become a window. We could see the throne room above. It was a scene of chaos. Kalen was on his knees, surrounded by Shadowfang warriors. Prince Theron was fighting, but he was being overwhelmed. And striding through the battle was Alpha Vorlag, a giant of a man with a face carved from cruelty, his eyes scanning the room, looking for me. "The Omega," he bellowed. "Bring me the Starlight." "She is mine." He was going to kill Kalen. I could feel it. "We have to go back," I cried, grabbing the Starlight Accord. It was lighter than air in my hands. "Hold on to me," Ilara commanded, and she grabbed my free hand. She held up her moonstone pendant. "Mama, guide us home." The second truth flared with brilliant golden light. The world twisted and spun, and in a dizzying lurch, the geode library vanished. We rematerialized in the throne room, right in the center of the battle, the Starlight Accord glowing in my hands. Every fighting wolf froze, stunned by our sudden appearance. Vorlag's eyes found me, and a terrifying, possessive grin spread across his face. But my eyes were only for Kalen. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, his strength nearly gone, the black veins once again crawling visibly up his neck. Our eyes met across the battlefield. "I'm here, my love. I sent the thought down our bond, pouring all my strength, all my certainty into it. I'm here, and I know how to save you. His amber eyes clouded with pain. Cleared for a moment, they filled with a love so profound it stole my breath. Then Vorlag spoke, his voice a low, hungry growl that silenced the entire hall. There you are. The world snapped into sharp, brutal focus. The scent of blood and sweat filled the air. The clash of steel was a harsh symphony, and the predatory gleam in Alpha Vorlag's eyes was a promise of violence. But in the center of that storm, I was an island of calm. The starlight accord pulsed in my hands, a steady, warm heartbeat of ancient power. And my own wolf answered it with a low, resonant hum in my soul. Vorlag took a step forward, his massive form casting a long shadow. You have caused me a great deal of trouble, little star, he snarled. But the chase is over. You will come with me now, and perhaps I will let this pathetic pack live. Before I could speak, a silver blur shot past me. Kalen, fueled by a final reserve of strength and pure, unadulterated fury, placed himself between Vorlag and me. His body was battered. His breath came in ragged gasps. But his stance was that of an unyielding king. You will not touch her. Kalen's voice was a low, deadly thunder that rolled through the throne room. She is my mate, claimed and blessed. Vorlog laughed. A harsh, grating sound. A claim made in madness. You are a dying king, Kalen, clinging to a ghost. She is a Shadowfang Omega, and I am here to collect what is mine. She is not a thing to be collected. The voice that rang out was high and clear. Yet it carried an authority that made the warriors flinch. Ilara stepped forward, her small hand still clutching mine. She pointed a finger at Vorlag, her face a mask of childish outrage. You're a bad man. And you hurt my papa. Vorlag's amused smirk faltered for a second, replaced by annoyance. Silence, child. This is no place for you. The child speaks the truth, I said, my voice layered with the resonance of the starlight accord. It was no longer just my voice. It was the voice of generations. I am no one's property, and the king is not dying. He is healing. I didn't wait for his retort. I turned my back on him, a gesture of such absolute dismissal that a stunned silence fell. My entire world narrowed to Kalen. I could feel the dark poison writhing inside him through our bond, a nest of vipers strangling his wolf spirit. I need to touch you, I whispered to him, my voice for his ears only. I need to draw the poison out. It will hurt. His amber eyes, clouded with pain, held mine. A world of understanding passed between us. He saw the fear in my eyes, the uncertainty of this untested power, and he gave me the one thing I needed most, his absolute trust. Do it, he rasped. I am yours. I placed the starlight accord on the floor beside me. Its pages glowed, the text shifting and swirling as if alive. Then I pressed my hands against Kalen's chest, directly over his heart. I closed my eyes, and I let my wolf rise to the surface. Silver light, pure and bright, erupted from my palms and enveloped him. Gasps echoed around the hall. But this was not the violent shockwave from before. This was a gentle, deliberate flow. I sent my consciousness into the light, following it into the labyrinth of his being. I found his wolf. It was a magnificent, midnight black creature, but it was pinned down, entangled in thick, black tendrils of the poison. It was weak, its golden eyes dim. It looked at my silver light, not with aggression, but with a weary, desperate hope. "I am here to help," I whispered in this space between spirit and flesh. I reached for the tendrils with my light. The moment I touched them, agony lanced through me, sharp and acidic. It was Vorlog's malice, Farron's betrayal, the dark magic that sustained it. All of it, a concentrated venom that sought to corrupt anything it touched. I cried out, my physical body trembling, and I did not let go. I began to pull. It was like drawing barbed wire from a wound. Every inch was a fresh wave of torment. I felt the poison enter me, a cold fire spreading through my veins, threatening to extinguish my own light. I could hear Vorlag's triumphant roar in the distance, believing his magic was winning. But he had not accounted for the starlight. As the poison flowed into me, my wolf did not fight it with rage. She did not try to destroy it. She began to change it. The memory of the trial of truth flashed in my mind. The choice between shadow and light. This was the practical application. My starlight essence wrapped around the corrosive darkness, and slowly, painstakingly, I felt the hatred within it begin to unravel. It was like spinning straw into gold, turning lead into light. The venomous black tendrils, once inside me, began to glow with a soft silver sheen. In the throne room, everyone watched, mesmerized. The black veins on Kaylin's body didn't just fade. They lit up from within with my silver light and then dissolved into nothingness. The color returned to his face. His back straightened. His breathing deepened. And then his eyes opened. They were no longer clouded with pain or madness. They were the clear, fierce, vibrant amber of the Alpha King. Fully restored. The power that radiated from him was immense, but it was a controlled, focused power. The storm had passed. He looked at me, and his gaze was full of such awe and love that it made my heart ache. But the cost was real. I swayed on my feet, the transformed energy a heavy, foreign weight inside me. I had purified the poison, but containing it was a tremendous strain. "Arya!" Kaylin's arms were around me, holding me up. Vorlag's triumph had turned to sheer, incandescent rage. "What have you done?" he screamed. "That is my power." "It was never yours to wield," I managed, my voice strained. "It is perverted, unnatural. I will tear it from your corpse." Vorlag shifted. His wolf was a hulking, brutish beast, all muscle and rage. He lunged. Kalen moved to meet him, but he was still weak, and I was clinging to him. It was Prince Theron who intervened. He threw himself in front of Vorlag's charge, his own smaller wolf slamming into the alpha's flank. It was a desperate, suicidal move. Vorlag swatted him away like a fly, sending him crashing into a pillar. But the distraction was enough. Enough! Kalen's voice was a command that shook the foundations of the citadel. He gently pushed me behind him, his own transformation swift and majestic. His wolf was a creature of shadow and grace, larger than before, his fur tipped with what looked like silver starlight, a permanent mark of our bond. The two alphas circled each other, the air crackling with tension. "A challenge is made," Elder Marcus intoned, his voice formal. "The rule of the Silvervale Howlers is at stake." This was no longer about me. This was about the kingdom. I watched, my heart in my throat. As the two titans clashed, it was a brutal dance of tooth and claw. Kalen was faster, more agile, but Vorlag was a battering ram of pure hatred. Through it all, I felt the strange, transformed energy inside me stirring. It wasn't poison anymore, but it wasn't entirely mine. It was waiting. The fight turned. Vorlag, in a cunning move, feigned injury, and when Kalen moved in for the decisive blow, the Shadow Fang Alpha twisted and his jaws closed around Kalen's hind leg. A sickening crunch echoed in the hall. Kalen howled in pain, and something inside me broke open. The energy I had absorbed, the purified power of the curse, surged out of me. It did not attack Vorlag. Instead, it enveloped Kalen in a brilliant silver-gold aura. His wound knitted itself together before our eyes. His strength returned, multiplied. He threw Vorlag off with a roar that was half his, half mine. The Shadow Fang Alpha stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock and terror. He was not just facing Kalen anymore. He was facing the combined power of the Alpha King and the Starlight Wolf. "Yield," Kalen commanded, his voice absolute. For a moment, I thought Vorlag would, but then his eyes, burning with hatred, found mine over Kalen's shoulder. "Never," he spat. "I will see this kingdom in ashes first." He gathered himself for one last desperate lunge, but he never made it. A small, clear voice cut through the tension. "Third truth." Ilara stood, her moonstone pendant held high. It blazed with the last of its stored power. But this light was different. It wasn't an attack, it was a revelation. A beam of pure white light shot from the pendant and struck Vorlag. He didn't scream in pain. He froze, his body rigid, his eyes wide open. And then, projected for all to see on the great wall of the throne room, were his memories. We saw him poisoning his own predecessor. We saw him torturing Omegas. We saw him striking my sister, Lyra. We saw his secret pacts with other rogue alphas to carve up the northern territories. We saw every lie, every betrayal, every act of cruelty. The evidence was irrefutable. painted in the light of ultimate truth. The gathered Shadowfang warriors, those who had followed him out of fear or loyalty, stared in horror. One by one, they dropped their weapons. The fight went out of them. Vorlag, exposed and powerless, collapsed to the floor, not in pain, but in utter defeat. The truth had broken him more completely than any physical blow ever could. The throne room was utterly silent. Kalen shifted back to his human form. Standing tall and powerful, he looked at the defeated Alpha, then at his own warriors, and finally at the stunned Shadowfang pack. "The challenge is over," he declared. "Alpha Vorlag is defeated by the laws of pack and the judgment of truth. His life is forfeit." He turned to me, his eyes asking a silent question. The power of life and death was his, but he was offering me a say. I thought of my sister, trapped and broken. I thought of the pain he had caused. But I also thought of the Starlight Accord and its teachings of justice, not vengeance. I walked forward until I stood over the broken form of Alpha Vorlag. I looked down at the man who had been my nightmare. "No," I said, my voice clear and carrying. "Do not kill him." A murmur of surprise rippled through the hall. "To kill him would make us executioners," I said, looking at Kalen, then at the elders. "And it would not heal the wounds he has caused." The Starlight Accord speaks of balance, of consequences that fit the crime. I note, so my face was level with Vorlag's. His eyes, full of hate, met mine. "You sought to steal power," I whispered. So only he could hear. "You sought to break spirits, so that is what you will lose." I placed my hand on his forehead. My silver light flared one last time. I did not take his life. I reached for the core of his being, for the connection to his wolf, and I did not sever it. I silenced it. I placed a permanent, unbreakable seal upon his wolf, locking it away deep inside him. He would live the rest of his life as a human, trapped in a body that could never change, never feel the wind in its fur, never hear the howl of its pack. For a wolf, it was a fate worse than death. A single tormented tear traced a path through the grime on Vorlag's cheek. A light in his eyes, the predatory alpha light, went out, leaving behind the hollow shell of a man. I stood up, my legs weak. The throne room was still silent, but the atmosphere had changed. The threat was gone. The air itself felt cleaner. Kalen came to my side, his arms slipping around my waist, holding me steady. He looked out at the assembled packs, Silverveil and Shadowfang alike. "The war is over," he announced. "Let this be a new beginning." But as the cheers began to rise, I looked towards the gates, towards the east, where the Shadowfang territory lay. My work was not yet done. My sister was still waiting. The silence in the throne room did not last long. It was broken by a slow, deliberate clapping. Prince Theron, leaning heavily against the shattered pillar, his face bruised and bloodied, was the source. The sound was not mocking, but held a bitter, self-directed irony. "A new beginning," he echoed, his voice raw. He pushed himself upright, wincing in pain, and took a limping step forward. All eyes turned to him. "You speak of new beginnings, brother?" "While I stand here as a monument to the rottenness of the old." He stopped before Kaelin and me, and then, to the shock of everyone present, he dropped to one knee. He bowed his head, exposing the back of his neck in the ultimate gesture of submission. "My life is yours, Alpha King," Theron said, his voice thick with a remorse that felt startlingly genuine. "I have no excuses. My ambition blinded me. My jealousy festered until I became a weapon for a monster. I poisoned you. I betrayed our blood. I would understand if you demand my life." The hall held its breath. This was the moment. The traitor prince delivered and surrendering. The law was clear. The punishment for treason was death. Kaelin looked down at his brother, his expression unreadable. I could feel the conflict raging within him through our bond, the betrayal, the hurt, warring with a lifetime of brotherly love. I placed a hand on Kaelin's arm. "The Starlight Accord speaks of redemption," I said softly. "My words for him alone. It speaks of justice that heals rather than punishes. He does not deserve your mercy, Starlight." A Silver Veil warrior growled from the crowd. "Perhaps not," I answered, raising my voice just enough to be heard. "But is mercy something one deserves? Or is it something we give to prove we are better than our enemies?" I looked at Farron, at the genuine tears of shame now mixing with the blood on his face. I saw the broken man, not the cunning prince. Vorlag's compulsion may have worn down his resistance, but the initial weakness, the envy, had been his own, and he was now drowning in the consequences. "Kaelin," I whispered, "a death ends a story. A punishment can write a new one." Kaelin's jaw tightened. He stared at his brother for a long, agonizing minute. Then he spoke, his voice echoing with finality. "I will not take your life, Farron," he said. A wave of surprise swept the room. "But you have forfeited your place as prince. You are stripped of your title, your lands, and your standing. From this moment, you are Omega." A collective gasp rippled through the nobility. To be made Omega was a social death, a fall from grace more profound than any prison. Theron flinched as if struck, but he did not protest. He kept his head bowed. "You will remain in the citadel," Kaelin continued, his voice cold. "You will perform the duties of the lowest Omega. You will serve the pack you sought to destroy. You will live every day with the reminder of what you have done." "That is your sentence. Do you accept it?" Theron's shoulders shook. When he looked up, his eyes were clear. "I accept, my king. Thank you for my life. I will spend it in atonement." It was done. The internal threat was neutralized. But a larger task remained. The Shadowfang warriors still stood in our hall, leaderless and adrift. They looked lost, their eyes flicking from the broken Vorlag to Kaelin, uncertain of their fate. Kaelin addressed them. "Shadowfangs, your Alpha is fallen, not by treachery, but by challenge and the exposure of his crimes. You followed him out of duty or fear. I offer you a new choice." He stepped forward, his presence commanding, and, for the first time, free of the dark poison that had plagued him, he was every inch the Alpha King. Swear fealty to the Silver Veil Howlers. Join our pack, and you will be granted amnesty and a fresh start. Your families will be safe, your honor can be rebuilt, or you may depart in peace, exiles, to find your own path. But know that any who choose to leave and raise a hand against us will be shown no mercy. It was a generous offer, more generous than many would have given. The Shadowfang warriors looked at each other. Then, one by one, they began to kneel. First the ones who had surrendered early, then the ones who had fought, and finally, even the most hardened of Vorlag's inner circle bent the knee. They had seen the truth. They had felt Kaelin's strength and my power. They saw a future here, which was more than Vorlag had ever offered. A wave of relief washed over me. The immediate crisis was over. The kingdom was secure. But my own heart was still tethered to a dark cell in the east. As if reading my thoughts, Kaelin turned to me. The formal mask of the king softened, and I saw my mate looking back at me. "Now," he said, his voice gentle, "we have a rescue to mount." Hope, sharp and painful, flared in my chest. "Lyra? We ride for the Shadowfang Keep at first light," he declared, his voice carrying to his newly expanded pack. "We go to reclaim what was stolen. We go to bring my mate's sister home." A roar of approval met his words. The pack was united, energized by victory and a new, righteous cause. The rest of the day was a blur of organized chaos. Healers tended to the wounded. The hall was cleared. The symbols of Vorlag's brief occupation were scrubbed away. I moved through it all in a daze. The starlight accord never leaving my side. Its presence a comfort and a guide. That night, for the first time, I did not sleep in the servants' quarters. A suite of rooms adjacent to Kaelin's was prepared for me. It was grand and beautiful, with windows that looked out over the starlit mountains. It felt alien. I stood in the center of the vast bedroom, feeling like an imposter. A soft knock came at the door. It was Kaelin. He didn't say anything. He just walked in, took my hand, and led me out onto the balcony. The night air was cold and clean. Below, the citadel was quieting, the torches casting a warm, peaceful glow. "It does not feel real," I confessed, my voice small. "Any of it. This room, the title, that I have a sister." He turned me to face him, his hands warm on my shoulders. "It is real. Arya, you are real. What you did today, you did not just save my life. You saved my soul. You saved my kingdom, brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. And tomorrow, we will save your family." Tears welled in my eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming emotion. I leaned my forehead against his chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. Our bond was a quiet, golden hum between us. A constant, reassuring presence. "I was so afraid," I whispered, "in the trials, and when I was drawing the poison, I felt it trying to corrupt me, but it didn't, he said firmly, because your heart is pure. Arya, your strength comes from love, not from hate. That is a power Vorlog could never comprehend. We stood there in silence for a long time, under the blanket of 1,000 stars. The fear for my sister was still a cold knot in my stomach. But it was tempered now by a fierce, burning hope, and by the unwavering strength of the man standing beside me, the Alpha King, my mate. We were going to bring Lyra home. Dawn broke over the Silver Vale Mountains in a blaze of crimson and gold. A defiantly beautiful contrast to the grim purpose that filled the citadel's main courtyard. 50 of our finest warriors, a mix of seasoned Silver Vale veterans and the most steadfast of the newly sworn Shadowfangs, stood ready. Their armor gleamed and their faces were set with determination. At their head stood Kaelin, a king riding to war not for conquest, but for liberation. I stood beside my horse, my fingers nervously adjusting the simple traveling cloak I wore over a tunic and breeches. The grand dresses of Aluna felt like a costume I had not yet grown into. The starlight accord was secured in a saddlebag, wrapped in protective cloth, its presence a tangible weight of responsibility. Ilara came running out, bundled in a warm cloak, her governess trailing behind her. She threw her arms around my legs. "You have to bring Aunt Lyra home," she said, her little face serious. "Tell her I have a pony she can ride." My heart squeezed. "I will tell her," I promised, kneeling to hug her tight. "You be brave for your papa and me." "I am always brave," she declared, though her lower lip trembled just a little. Kaelin lifted her into a crushing hug. "We will return before the moon is full again." My little star, be good for Elder Anya. With final orders given, we mounted up. As we rode through the citadel gates, the people lined the streets. They did not cheer. They bowed. They bowed to their king. And then, to my astonishment, they bowed to me. Their faces were full of a reverence that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with gratitude. I had not just saved their king, I had given them back their future. We rode east toward the jagged, foreboding peaks that marked the border of the Shadowfang territory. The journey was swift and silent, a hard pace set by Kaelin. The landscape changed from lush, pine-scented valleys to rocky, barren gorges. The very air felt thinner, colder. As we drew closer, my connection to Lyra, that faint twin bond I had only just begun to acknowledge, grew stronger. It was a thin, pained thread, but it was there, a constant, dull ache of despair that echoed in my own soul. On the evening of the second day, we crested a ridge and looked down upon the Shadowfang Keep. It was a brutal, functional structure carved into the side of a mountain. All sharp angles and dark stone, it looked less like a home and more like a prison. Because it was. There are no guards on the outer walls. Rorik, the beta, observed, his sharp eyes scanning the fortress. The patrols are sparse. It seems Vorlag took almost his entire force to Silvervale. Their spirit is broken, Kalen said, his voice low. They know their alpha is defeated. They are waiting for the hammer to fall. Then let's not keep them waiting, I said, my own voice surprising me with its steel. We descended under the cover of twilight. There was no need for a stealthy approach. Our arrival was a statement. The few guards at the main gate took one look at the Silvervale standard and the powerful Alpha at its head, and they simply dropped their weapons and opened the gates. Word of Vorlag's defeat had traveled faster than we had. We rode into the main bailey. The Shadowfang pack members who remained, mostly the old. The young and those too weak to fight emerged from their huts and barracks. They watched us with wide, fearful eyes, but there was no hostility, only a weary resignation. The acting commander, a grizzled old warrior with a deeply lined face, stepped forward and note. Alpha Kalen, he said, his voice wroth with disuse. The keep is yours. We offer no resistance. Where is she? I asked, dismounting before Kalen could speak. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The Omega. Lyra, where is she being held? The old warrior looked up at me, and a flicker of recognition and something like pity crossed his face. The dungeons, my lady, he said, gesturing to a low, ominous doorway at the base of the main tower. But you should prepare yourself. A cold dread washed over me. I didn't wait for an escort. I ran. Arya! Kalen called after me, but I was already pushing open the heavy iron-banded door and plunging down a narrow, winding staircase into the dark. The air in the dungeon was thick with the smell of mold, stale straw, and despair. Torches sputtered in brackets, casting long, dancing shadows. I moved down the corridor, my eyes frantically scanning the barred cells. Most were empty. Then, at the very end in the darkest, coldest cell, I saw a huddled form. She was curled on a thin pallet of filthy straw, her back to me. But I would have known her anywhere. Her hair, the same shade as mine, was matted and dull. Her frame was painfully thin, and the swell of her pregnancy was a stark, tragic contrast to her emaciation. Lyra? I whispered, my voice cracking. The figure flinched but did not turn. I fumbled with the heavy lock, my hands shaking. It was secured with a complex mechanism, but a touch of my silver light melted it away. The door swung open with a groan. I stepped inside, the straw crunching under my boots. I knelt beside the pallet. Lyra, I said again, gently, it's me. It's Arya, your sister. Slowly, so slowly, she turned over. Her face was a mirror of my own, but it was a mirror that had been shattered and poorly glued back together. A fresh bruise bloomed on her cheekbone. Her eyes, my eyes, were empty pools of hopelessness. The Shadowfang rejection brand was still a red scar on her shoulder, a mark I had transcended, but which still held her captive. She looked at me, and for a long moment there was no recognition, only a dull animal fear. And then it came, a flicker, a spark of memory, of a connection that not even years of torture could completely erase. Her lips parted. A dry, rasping sound emerged, barely a word. Arya? Tears streamed down my face as I reached out and took her cold, frail hand in mine. Yes, I sobbed. The word a prayer of thanks. Yes. It's me. I'm here. I'm taking you home. Her fingers tightened around mine with a strength I didn't know she possessed. A single tear escaped the corner of her eye and traced a clean path through the grime on her cheek. In that touch, in that single tear, I felt the first fragile seed of hope take root in the darkness. The rescue was not over. The healing had only just begun. But we were together. At long last, we were together. The journey back to Silvervale was a slow, painful pilgrimage. We traveled in a covered wagon, Lyra cushioned by every fur and blanket we could find. She drifted in and out of a feverish sleep, her body racked by the strain of malnutrition and her advanced pregnancy. I rarely left her side, holding her hand, wiping her brow with a damp cloth, whispering words of comfort that felt woefully inadequate. Kaelin had taken charge of the Shadowfang Keep with a firm but compassionate hand. He left a contingent of his own warriors, led by a just and fair commander, to oversee the transition and ensure the pack was fed and cared for. There would be no reprisals. The message was clear. They were now under the protection of the Silvervale Howlers. And a new era was beginning, but my world had shrunk to the confines of this wagon and the fragile life within it. The twin bond I shared with Lyra, once a faint whisper, was now a raw, open wound. I felt her nightmares as my own. Flashes of Vorloc's cruelty, the cold of the dungeon, the crushing weight of despair. It was a torrent of pain that threatened to drown me. She is fighting a battle you cannot fight for her, Arya, Kaelin said softly one evening as he rode beside the wagon. His presence was a steady anchor in the storm of my anxiety. I can feel her slipping away, I whispered, my voice thick with tears. The baby, it's coming too soon. She's not strong enough. She is stronger than you know. She survived him, and now she has you. He reached through the canvas opening, his warm, calloused hand finding mine. We have the best healers in the realm waiting for her. And she has a starlight wolf for a sister. Have faith. His words were a balm, but the dread was a cold stone in my stomach. The starlight accord lay beside me, but its wisdom felt distant, academic. This was not a curse to be purified with light. This was a soul that had been systematically broken. On the third night, as we made camp in the shelter of a pine forest, Lyra's condition worsened. Her breathing became shallow and rapid, and her skin was clammy. High Healer Kale, who had accompanied us, emerged from the wagon after a long examination, his face grave. The child is in distress, he told Kaelin and me, his voice low. The trauma and malnutrition. Her body cannot sustain the pregnancy much longer. If we do not deliver the baby soon, we will lose them both. Then do it, I said immediately, my heart clenching. It is too risky, Kale argued. Out here, without my full supplies, the chances are slim. We must push for Silvervale. We don't have that kind of time, I insisted, a desperate certainty filling me. I looked at Kalen. I have to try. He didn't ask what I meant. He simply nodded, his trust in me absolute. Do what you must. My love, we will make camp here. They laid Lyra on a bed of furs by the fire. Her eyes were closed, her face pale as moonlight. I knelt beside her, the Starlight Accord heavy in my lap. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I closed my eyes and placed my hands on her swollen belly, reaching for that place inside me where my wolf resided. But this time, I did not call upon power or light. I did not seek to cleanse or transform. I thought of the trial of sacrifice. I thought of bearing the pain of others. I reached for our bond, the twin connection that tied my soul to hers. And instead of just feeling her pain, I opened myself to it. I invited it in. It was like stepping into a blizzard. Her fear, her anguish, her shattered sense of self, it crashed over me, a tidal wave of icy despair. I gasped, my body seizing up as the full weight of her suffering flooded into me. It was a darkness so complete I felt I would never see light again. I saw every blow, heard every cruel word, felt the gnawing hunger and the utter loneliness. It was a torture far more intimate and devastating than Vorlag's poison. Let me carry this for you, sister. I sent down the bond, pouring every ounce of my love, my strength, my will into the thought. Just for a little while. Just long enough for you to bring your child into the world. I felt her spirit, faint and flickering, stir within the storm. A question, a wonder. You would do that? Her thought was a mere wisp. I would, I answered, my own consciousness beginning to fray under the onslaught. You are not alone anymore. I am here. I will always be here. I took a deeper breath and pulled harder. I drew the crushing weight of her trauma into myself, creating a small, calm space around her spirit. It was the ultimate sacrifice, not of my life, but of my own peace. I willingly took her hell into my heart to give her a moment of heaven. And in that space, a miracle happened. Lyra's breathing evened out. The tension left her body. Her eyes fluttered open, and for the first time, they were clear. They were focused. They looked at me, and I saw not a broken victim, but my sister, my twin. Arya, she whispered, her voice still weak. But lucid. A single, powerful contraction racked her body. But this time, she did not cry out in fear. She gritted her teeth, her hands gripping mine, and she pushed. The world narrowed to the circle of firelight. To the sound of her labored breathing, to the feel of her hand in mine, Kale and the midwives moved with quiet efficiency, but I was locked in that sacred space with Lyra, sharing her burden, sharing her strength. It felt like an eternity. The dark memories I had taken on swirled inside me, threatening to consume my light. I clung to the image of Kalen's face, to Alara's smile, to the hope of the child being born. They were my anchors in the storm. And then a new sound pierced the night. A strong, healthy, indignant cry. A baby's wail. The tension shattered. Lyra collapsed back onto the furs, exhausted but alive. A tear of pure, unadulterated joy tracing a path through the dirt on her face. Kale held up a squirming, perfect baby boy, his skin pink and his lungs robust. "He's here," I sobbed, the weight I was carrying suddenly feeling lighter. Transformed by the sheer power of that new life. "He's here, Lyra. He's beautiful." She reached for her son, and as she held him to her chest, a soft silver glow, not mine, but hers, flickered around them for just a moment. A dormant spark, awakened by love and survival. I slumped backward, emotionally and spiritually spent. Kalen was there instantly, his arms catching me, holding me tight against his chest. "You did it," he murmured into my hair, his voice thick with emotion. "By the great moon, Arya, you did it." I looked at Lyra, at the tiny, perfect life in her arms, and I knew a truth as profound as any in the Accord. I had given up a part of my light to carry her darkness. And in doing so, I had not diminished. I had become something more. I had become a true sister, a true Luna. The healing was not over. It was only beginning. But as I watched my sister smile for the first time, I knew that the most powerful magic was not in grand displays of power, but in the quiet, willing sacrifice of one heart for another. The triumphant return to Silvervale Citadel was nothing like I had imagined. There were no cheering crowds, no grand fanfares. We arrived in the deep quiet of the pre-dawn, the stars still sharp and bright overhead. The air was hushed, respectful. The news of the successful rescue and the new life had flown ahead of us on the wings of hope. Lyra and her son, whom she had named Kalen after the king who had saved them, were immediately taken to the royal healing wards. High Healer Kale and his team surrounded them, their magic a gentle, golden cocoon of care. For the first time in her life, my sister was surrounded by kindness. I stood at the doorway, watching them, a profound exhaustion settling deep into my bones. The emotional toll of carrying Lyra's pain had left a hollow ache inside me. The memories I had absorbed were now my own ghosts to wrestle with. Kalen's hand found the small of my back. "You need to rest, Arya. You have given everything." I shook my head, my eyes still fixed on Lyra. "I can't. Not yet. The bond, it's different now. It's like I can still feel the echoes." "That is the weight of leadership," a gentle voice said. Elder Anya approached, her wise eyes soft with understanding. A true Luna does not stand above her pack. She stands with them. She shares their burdens. What you did for your sister was the first and greatest act of your reign. She led me away from the healing wards and up to the highest balcony of the citadel. The one that looked out over the sleeping kingdom, the first hints of pink were brushing the eastern horizon. "The Starlight Accord is not merely a book of laws, child," she said, her gaze on the awakening world. "It is a guide to a different kind of power. A power of empathy. You did not just use your light to fight darkness. You used it to understand it, to carry it, and in doing so, you began to heal it. It hurts," I confessed, the admission feeling both weak and necessary. "It will," she agreed. "But that pain is now a part of your strength. It will allow you to see the suffering in others that you would have once missed. It will guide your decisions with compassion, not just cold justice." We stood in silence as the sun finally crested the mountains, bathing Silvervale in a warm, golden light. It felt symbolic. A new day, a new beginning, not just for the kingdom, but for me. Later that morning, a formal council was convened. It was the first time I sat at the high table, not as a curiosity or a claimant, but as the acknowledged Luna of the Silvervale Howlers. Kalen sat at my right, his strength a palpable force. On my left, a chair was left empty, a silent promise for Lyra when she was strong enough. The mood was somber but hopeful. Reports were given on the integration of the Shadowfang wolves, the rebuilding of trust. A state of the granaries and the defenses. It was the mundane, vital work of ruling. And for the first time, I did not feel like an imposter. I listened, I asked questions, and I offered suggestions that were met with thoughtful consideration. Not deference to my title. The final matter was the official sentencing of Thering. He was brought before the council, dressed in the simple, unadorned robes of an Omega. He kept his eyes downcast, but he stood straight, accepting his fate. "Prince Theron," Kalen began, his voice formal, "your crimes have been heard. Do you have anything to say before your sentence is carried out?" Theron lifted his head. His gaze swept the council, then settled on me. There was no plea in his eyes, only a stark, raw honesty. "I have no defense," he said, his voice clear, "only a regret that is a living thing inside me. I was given every privilege, and I squandered it for a crown that was never meant to be mine. I do not ask for forgiveness. I only ask for the chance to serve this pack in whatever small way I can, to spend the rest of my days trying to repay a fraction of the debt I owe." He then turned to me. "Luna Aria, you showed me a strength I did not know existed, a strength that saves rather than crushes. For that lesson, I will be eternally grateful." His words were not a performance. They were the truth. I could feel it. Kalen looked at me, passing the final judgment to me. This was my test, as much as it was Theron's. I stood. The council watched me, waiting. "Theron of the Silvervale Howlers," I said, my voice echoing softly in the chamber. "You are sentenced to live as Omega. You will serve this pack with your hands and your heart. You will teach the young ones of the dangers of ambition and the importance of loyalty. You will be a living reminder that no one is beyond redemption if they are willing to earn it." I paused, letting the words sink in. "Your sentence is not a prison. It is a path. Walk it with honor." A look of profound relief washed over Theron's face. It was not the relief of a man escaping death, but of a man being given a purpose. He bowed deeply. "Thank you, Luna. I will not fail you again." As he was led away, Elder Marcus, who had once been ready to dissolve my bond, gave me a slow, respectful nod. The council was united. After the session, Kaelin and I walked through the Citadel gardens. The late morning sun was warm on our faces. "You were magnificent," he said, lacing his fingers through mine. "I was terrified," I admitted, with a small laugh. "That is what makes it magnificent," he replied. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting in spite of it." He stopped and turned to face me, his expression becoming serious. "There is one more thing we must do, Arya, one that cannot be delayed." "What is it?" "Our bonding ceremony," he said, a smile touching his lips. "The official one. Not a claiming born of desperation, but a union chosen in peace. I would have the whole kingdom see me pledge my life and my soul to you." Ere starlight Luna, my breath caught. The memory of the chaotic, painful claiming in the great hall was a stark contrast to the peace of this moment. "I would like that," I whispered, my heart swelling with a joy so pure it felt like my own personal sunrise. "I would like that very much." He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against mine, our bond humming with a contentment so deep it felt like coming home. The battles were won, the wounds were healing, and a new chapter was beginning. Not just for a king and his Luna, but for two souls who had found their other half in the most unlikely of places. The Silver Veil Citadel had not seen a celebration like this in a generation. The grim, fearful atmosphere that had clung to the stones for months was swept away, replaced by a vibrant tapestry of color, music, and laughter. Garlands of late summer flowers draped every archway, and the scent of roasting meat and fresh bread filled the air. The bonding ceremony of the Alpha King and the Starlight Luna was not just a wedding. It was a declaration that the shadows had passed. I stood in my chambers, looking at my reflection in a full-length mirror. The gown was not the traditional heavy velvet of a Luna queen, but a flowing creation of silver white silk that seemed to be woven from moonlight itself. It was simple, elegant, and felt more like me than any ornate costume ever could. My hair was left loose, cascading over my shoulders, and the only jewelry I wore was a delicate circlet of twisted silver, set with a single luminous moonstone. Ilara, acting as my official attendant, beamed up at me. "You look like a queen from the stories, Arya." "Thank you, little star," I said, my voice trembling slightly. A soft knock came at the door, and Lyra entered, leaning lightly on a cane. She was still pale and thin, but her eyes held a light that had been absent before. In her arms, she held a peacefully sleeping Kaelin. "He wanted to see his aunt before she becomes a queen," she said, her voice still weak but steady. Tears pricked my eyes. The sight of her, standing, smiling, holding her healthy son, was the greatest gift I could have received. I hugged her gently, careful of the baby between us. "Are you ready?" she asked. I took a deep breath, looking from her hopeful face to Alara's excited one. "I am." The great hall was packed to the rafters. Every noble, warrior, and citizen who could fit was inside, and thousands more gathered in the courtyards outside, listening to the proceedings through enchanted crystals. As I walked down the central aisle on the arm of a proud-looking elder Anya, a reverent silence fell. And then I saw him. Kalen stood at the end of the aisle. Before the council of elders, he was not dressed in his formal armor or royal robes, but in a simple dark tunic and trousers that emphasized his powerful build. He looked less like a distant king and more like the warrior and mate he was. His amber eyes found mine, and the love in them was so open, so fierce, that it stole my breath. The ceremony itself was a blend of ancient pack tradition and the new wisdom of the Starlight Accord. We did not speak vows of obedience and dominance. Instead, we pledged ourselves to each other as equals. I, Kalen, Alpha of the Silver Veil Howlers, pledge my heart, my strength, and my loyalty to you. "Arya," he said, his voice resonating through the hall, "I will stand beside you, not before you. I will cherish your light and protect it with my life. You are my mate, my equal, and my queen." Then it was my turn. I turned to face him, my hands in his. "I, Arya, Luna of the Silver Veil Howlers, pledge my heart, my spirit, and my loyalty to you, Kalen," I said, my voice clear and strong, carrying to every corner of the hall. "I will stand beside you, not behind you. I will share your burdens and your joys. You are my mate, my equal, and my king." Elder Marcus stepped forward, holding a ceremonial chalice. "By the power of the moon goddess, and under the witness of the Starlight Accord, we seal this bond. May your union bring strength to the weak, hope to the lost, and light to the darkest of nights." We each drank from the chalice, a sweet wine that tasted of promises. As we did, Kalen and I let our wolves rise to the surface, just enough for our auras to flare. His a deep, powerful gold, mine a brilliant, shimmering silver. The two lights intertwined, swirling together into a beautiful, harmonious glow that rose to the vaulted ceiling before gently fading. The silence broke into a roar of approval that shook the very foundations of the citadel. The feast that followed was a joyous but raucous affair. There was no high table. Kalen and I sat at a long table with our family. Lyra and baby Kalen, Alara and even Theron, who served the wine with a quiet dignity. Warriors and farmers, nobles and omegas, Silverveil and Shadowfang, all celebrated together. The rigid hierarchies of the past were, for this one night, forgotten. As the music swelled, Kalen stood and offered me his hand. "My Luna," he said, his eyes dancing. "May I have this dance?" We walked to the center of the floor, and as his arms went around me, the world faded away. We moved together, not as a king and his queen, but as a man and a woman deeply in love. It was a slow, simple dance, but every step felt like a of shared mornings and quiet evenings of a future built together. I rested my head on his shoulder, listening to the steady, strong beat of his heart, the music, the laughter, the joy of our people. It was all a beautiful symphony. Later, as we stood on a balcony overlooking the celebrating city, his arm wrapped around my waist, I felt a profound sense of peace. "It is over," I murmured, leaning into his side. "The war." "Fear. It's finally over." Kalen was silent for a moment, looking out at the sea of lights below. "No, my love," he said softly. "It is not over." He turned to me, his face serious in the moonlight. "The battle is over, but the work is just beginning. Building this new world, this kingdom of unity and compassion, that will be the challenge of our lifetime." He cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. "But we will face it together, as we face everything." I looked up at him, at my mate, my king, my partner. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be disagreements, setbacks, and new threats. But as I stood there, wrapped in his love and the hope of our people, I knew with absolute certainty that we would not falter. We were the Alpha and the Luna, the shield and the light. And our story was only just beginning. The peace of the bonding ceremony settled over Silvervale like a gentle snowfall. Beautiful and transformative, but I knew Kalen was right. Beneath the tranquil surface, the real work was just beginning. The kingdom was a tapestry of old wounds and new threads, and it was my duty, our duty, to weave them into something strong and whole. My days fell into a new rhythm, no longer defined by fear or survival, but by purpose. Mornings were spent in the royal healing wards with Lyra. Her physical recovery was slow but steady, bolstered by the best care and the quiet, persistent love that now surrounded her. It was her spirit that needed the most mending. The shadows in her eyes took time to fade. I would sit with her for hours, sometimes talking, often in silence, just holding her hand or little Kalen while he slept. The twin bond between us, once a conduit for her agony, was now slowly becoming a channel for healing. I could feel her tentative joy when Kalen grasped her finger, her quiet awe at the taste of sweet fruit, the fragile hope that bloomed when the sun warmed her face through the window. "He has your eyes," I told her one morning, watching as she traced the shape of her son's cheek. A real, genuine smile touched her lips for the first time. "Do you think so?" she whispered, her voice still hoarse from disuse. I hope he has your courage." "He will have his own," I said firmly, "and it will be magnificent." Afternoons were for the people. I walked among them, not with a royal guard, but with perhaps a single attendant. I visited the newly integrated Shadowfang families in their new quarters, listening to their fears about fitting in, their hopes for their children. I sat in the kitchens with the Omegas, learning the rhythms of the citadel from their perspective. I walked the training grounds, not to judge, but to understand the warriors who formed our first line of defense. At first, they bowed and stammered, unsure of how to address the starlight Luna. But I asked them to call me Arya. I asked about their families, their lives. Slowly, the walls of formality began to crumble. They saw that I was not a distant goddess to be worshipped, but a woman who cared, a leader who listened. One afternoon, I found Theron in the library, surrounded by a group of wide-eyed young pups from both packs. He was not reading them stories of battle and glory, but an old fable about a wolf who learned the value of every member of his pack, from the strongest hunter to the smallest pup who could find the sweetest berries. He looked up as I entered, and the children scrambled to their feet. "Luna Arya," they chirped in unison. "Please, sit," I said, joining them on the floor. I listened as Theron finished the tale, his voice calm and patient. When the children were dismissed, he remained, tidying the scattered scrolls. "You are good with them," I observed. He kept his eyes on his work, a faint flush on his cheeks. It is the only thing that feels right. Teaching them not to make my mistakes, he finally looked at me. "The sentence you gave me, Luna, it was not a punishment. It was a gift." His gratitude was a quiet testament to the change that was possible. Redemption was not a myth. It was a path, and he was walking it with humility. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, I would meet with Kaelin and the council. These sessions were no longer about crisis management, but about building. We discussed new laws based on the principles of the Starlight Accord. Laws that protected Omega rights, that ensured fair distribution of resources, that established councils where every wolf, regardless of rank, could have a voice. There was resistance, of course. Old nobles grumbled about tradition being overturned. Warriors questioned the softening of our borders. But Kaelin's authority was absolute. And my presence, the living embodiment of the new way, lent a weight to our arguments that could not be ignored. One evening, as we pored over plans for a new school that would educate pups from all backgrounds together, Kaelin looked up at me, his eyes soft in the candlelight. "You are remarkable," he said, his voice low. "You see the cracks in our foundation, and you do not paper over them. You pour gold into them, making them stronger and more beautiful." His words warmed me more than any praise of my power ever had. This was the partnership we had pledged. He was the unshakable pillar of strength and tradition. I was the agent of change and compassion. Together, we were building a kingdom that honored both. Weeks turned into a moon cycle. One day, Lyra asked to walk with me in the gardens. She leaned on my arm. But her steps were firm. Kaelin, swaddled and peaceful, slept in a sling across her chest. "I want to help," she said abruptly, stopping to look at a blooming, night-blooming jasmine. I cannot fight or rule, but I am not useless. You are the furthest thing from useless, Lyra, I said, my heart aching for her. You are a survivor. You are a mother. I know the darkness, she continued, her gaze distant. I know the feel of a cage. The sound of despair. There are others in this new, larger pack of yours who feel that way. The displaced, the frightened, the ones who feel they do not belong. She turned to me, her eyes, my eyes, now clear and determined. Let me be a voice for them. Let me create a place, a sanctuary within these walls, where they can come and not be judged, where they can remember what hope feels like. Tears filled my eyes. This was not the broken woman I had carried from the dungeons. This was a phoenix, rising from the ashes of her own destruction, ready to use her pain to light the way for others. It would be the greatest honor, I whispered, squeezing her arm. We will begin at once. And so the Starlight Sanctuary was born, a quiet wing of the citadel, filled with light and plants and soft places to sit, run by Lyra and supported by healers and volunteers. It became a heartbeat of compassion within the kingdom. A testament that no wound was too deep to heal, no soul too lost to find its way home. As I stood with Kaelin that night, watching the lights of the citadel twinkle below us, I felt a deep, abiding satisfaction. The battles had been violent and grand, but this quiet, patient work of mending hearts and building a future, this was the true meaning of being Luna. The war was indeed over. The work of creating a lasting peace had truly begun. The first true test of our new peace came not with a declaration of war, but with a whisper of plague. It began in the outer villages, a harsh, racking cough that stole the breath from the strong and the weak alike. It was called the stone lung, for that is what it felt like, one's chest filling with gravel. Panic, that old and familiar enemy, began to slither through the kingdom. Whispers started that the sickness was a curse, a punishment for accepting the Shadowfang wolves, for elevating a Starlight Omega to Luna. Fear, I was learning, was often a more dangerous contagion than any physical illness. High Healer Kael and his team worked tirelessly. But their magic seemed only to slow the disease, not stop it. The healing wards filled, and the grim sound of coughing became the citadel's new, dreaded music. I felt the fear of our people through my bond with the pack, a low, constant thrum of anxiety that grated on my nerves. Kaelin's solution was to tighten borders and quarantine the sick villages, a strong, logical alpha response to contain the threat. But my starlight nature, my hard-won empathy, rebelled. I could not stand behind stone walls while our people suffered. I have to go to them, I told Kaelin in our chambers one evening. His face was etched with worry. Arya, no, it is too dangerous. You are the heart of this kingdom if you fall ill. If I hide here while they suffer, then I am not their heart, I countered, my voice gentle but firm. I am their crown. locked away in a box. The starlight accord speaks of sharing burdens. How can I ask them to bear this one alone? He argued, he pleaded, his fear for me a palpable force in our bond. But he could not refute the truth in my words. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he relented. "Then I am coming with you." "No," I said, placing a hand on his chest. "You are the head. You must stay here and hold the kingdom together. The people need to see their king strong and steady at the helm. They need to see their Luna kneeling in the dirt beside them. We must lead in different ways, my love." The next morning, I rode out with a small contingent of healers and supplies, leaving a deeply troubled but trusting mate behind me. Our first stop was Oakhaven, the village hardest hit. The scene was one of quiet despair. Homes were shuttered, the streets were empty, and the air was thick with the sound of coughing. The villagers watched from their windows with hollow, fearful eyes as we arrived. I did not set up a command tent. I went straight to the longhouse they were using as a sick house. The smell of sickness and despair was overwhelming. I saw mothers clutching listless children, old men struggling for every breath. The pervasive gray pallor of the dying. For a moment, my courage faltered. What could I do? I was not a trained healer. My light had purged a magical curse, but this was a sickness of the body, mundane and relentless. Then I remembered Lyra's sanctuary. I remembered that sometimes the greatest magic was not in grand displays of power, but in simple human connection. I took off my cloak, rolled up my sleeves, and got to work. I did not try to use my starlight power to cure them. I carried water. I spooned broth into feverish mouths. I held the hands of the terrified and wiped the brows of the suffering. I sat with the children, telling them soft stories to distract them from their fear. At first, the villagers were stunned into silence. Their Luna was here, touching them, caring for them. Then, slowly, the ice of their fear began to melt. They started to talk. They shared their worries, their grief. I listened. In the evenings, exhausted and covered in grime, I would walk through the village, my own small light a beacon in the twilight. I did not hide my fatigue or my sorrow for their suffering. I let them see that I shared their burden. And then something extraordinary began to happen. One night, as I sat with a young boy whose breathing was particularly labored, my frustration and empathy crested. I placed my hands on his small burning chest, not with the intent to heal with magic, but simply to offer comfort. I poured all my love for my people, all my desperate hope for his survival. Into that touch, my hands began to glow with a soft, warm, silver light. It was different from the brilliant, powerful flare I had used on Kalen. This was gentler, a nurturing radiance. I felt the light seep into the boy, not attacking the sickness, but strengthening him. It bolstered his spirit, his will to fight. It was like pouring starlight into a withering plant. His breathing eased. The terrible rattle in his chest quieted. He looked up at me, his glassy eyes clearing for a moment, and he smiled. I hadn't cured the stone lung, but I had given him the strength to fight it himself. Word spread through the village. The Luna's touch brought strength. It brought hope. I moved from cot to cot, from house to house. I did not cure anyone, but I eased pain. I broke fevers. I gave weary bodies the resilience to endure another day. My power was not a sword to slay the plague, but a shield to help them survive it. Weeks passed. I traveled from village to village, a quiet, determined figure in silver. My light, a small but steady flame against the overwhelming darkness of the disease. The healers noted that in the villages I visited, the mortality rate dropped. People were not just surviving, they were finding the will to live. When I finally returned to the citadel, I was thin and weary to my very bones. But I was met not with fear, but with a reverence deeper than any I had known. Kalen gathered me in his arms, holding me as if I were made of glass. I have never been more terrified or more proud, he whispered into my hair. I had gone out as a queen to prove I was not afraid of my people's suffering. I returned having learned a new facet of my power, the power to nurture, to sustain, to inspire hope. The plague eventually ran its course, defeated by the combined efforts of the healer's medicine and the people's renewed will. But the lesson remained. The strength of a kingdom was not just in its walls or its army, but in the resilience of its people. And that resilience was fed by hope. I had gone to them as their Luna, and I had returned having truly become their heart. The last vestiges of the stone lung faded with the autumn leaves, leaving behind a kingdom tempered by shared hardship and strengthened by a newfound profound unity. The whispers that had blamed the Shadowfang integration or my own presence had been silenced by the sight of their Luna kneeling in the mud of Oakhaven. I was no longer just the Starlight Savior. I was one of them. It was in this atmosphere of hard-won peace that the delegation from the Sunstone Fangs arrived. They were the most powerful and isolated of the Western packs, rumored to possess ancient knowledge and a fierce independence. Their arrival was unexpected, their purpose unknown. They rode into our courtyard on massive golden-furred wolves, their armor inlaid with sun-bleached bone and polished quartz. At their head was their alpha, a man named Torian, whose presence was as solid and imposing as a mountain. Kalen received them in the great hall with all the formal courtesy of a fellow alpha. I stood at his side, my silver circlet cool against my brow. Torian's eyes, the color of a summer sky, swept over me with a curiosity that felt more analytical than disrespectful. Alpha Kalen. Torian's voice was a low rumble. We have heard many tales of a king brought back from the brink, of a starlight wolf rising from legend, of a plague faced with courage, not fear. We have come to see if the tales are true. His words were not a challenge, but an assessment. The future of our kingdom, I realized would not just be built on internal peace, but on our standing among the other packs. We were being judged. "You are welcome to see for yourself, Alpha Taurian," Kalen replied, his tone diplomatic but firm. For 3 days, the Sunstone Fangs observed. They toured the citadel, the integrated living quarters, the training grounds where Silverveil and Shadowfang warriors sparred side by side. They visited Lyra's Starlight Sanctuary, where Torian watched in silent contemplation as my sister, her spirit growing stronger each day, comforted a grieving widow. They attended a council session, listening as Omegas and Betas alike voiced their concerns and ideas. I saw the surprise in Torian's eyes when a young Shadowfang Omega respectfully disagreed with a Silverveil elder on crop rotation, and the elder actually considered the point. On the final evening of their visit, a grand feast was held in their honor. The hall was filled with music and the easy camaraderie that had become our new normal. But beneath the celebration, a tense anticipation hummed. Torian had yet to state his true purpose. As the feast wound down, the Sunstone Alpha stood. The hall fell silent. "I have seen many things in my long life," he began, his gaze sweeping the room. "I have seen kingdoms rise and fall on the strength of their armies. I have seen them crumble from corruption within." His eyes settled on me. "I have never seen a kingdom healed by compassion." He walked toward the high table, stopping before Kalen and me. "The Western territories are unstable. A warlord Draven gathers packs to his banner with promises of conquest. He believes strength is the only law. He would see your experiment in unity as a weakness to be exploited." A cold dread trickled down my spine. "A new threat, an external one. I have come to offer an alliance," Torian declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "Not of conquest, but of preservation. The Sunstone Fangs will stand with the Silverveil Howlers. We will protect this fragile light you have kindled. Because the world has enough conquerors, it is in desperate need of healers." The offer was more than we could have hoped for. It was validation. It was a shield. Kalen stood and clasped Torian's forearm in the traditional gesture. "The Silverveil Howlers accept your alliance, Alpha Torian. We will stand together." A cheer rose from our people. But my eyes met Torian's, and I saw the unspoken condition in his. The alliance was not just with Kalen, the strong Alpha King. It was with us, with the King and the Starlight Luna. It was a belief in the power of our combined rule. Later, as we saw the delegation off at the gates, Torian turned to me one last time. "The stories did not do you justice, Luna Aria," he said, his voice low. "You do not lead with power. You lead with truth. That is a far more dangerous weapon to tyrants. Guard it well." As their party disappeared into the dawn mist, I felt the weight of his words. The world was taking notice. We were no longer just rebuilding our own kingdom. We had become a symbol. A beacon. Kalen's hand found mine. "He is right, you know," he said softly. The battles ahead may not be fought with tooth and claw, but with ideas. Your compassion, Arya, is our greatest strength. I leaned into his side, watching the sun rise over the mountains we had fought so hard to protect. The peace we had built was no longer just our own. It was a promise to a wider world. A promise that there was another way. A better way. The path ahead was uncertain, shadowed by the threat of a warlord named Draven. But we were not alone. We had each other. We had our people. And we had the unshakable belief that light, no matter how small, could always push back the darkness. The alliance with the Sunstone Fangs was a sturdy shield, but the news of Warlord Draven was a persistent, distant thunder. We did not let it dictate our lives, but it sharpened our focus. The unity we had forged was no longer just an ideal. It was our greatest strategic asset. It was during this time of vigilant peace that my own body presented me with a new, wondrous and terrifying challenge. I was with child. The discovery sent a tremor through the citadel, a tremor of pure, unadulterated joy. Kaelin, the mighty Alpha King, swept me into his arms and spun me around. His laughter, a rich, joyful sound that echoed through the halls. Alara was ecstatic, already planning how she would teach her new sibling to climb the highest trees in the garden. Lyra hugged me, her eyes shining with a shared, secret understanding of the miracle of creation. But for me, the joy was intertwined with a deep, primal fear. My own mother had died in childbirth, or so I'd been told. The memory of Lyra's traumatic delivery in the forest was still fresh and raw. The thought of bringing a new life into the world, a life that was part me and part Kaelin, was overwhelming. What if my strange starlight nature made the pregnancy dangerous? What if I could not protect this tiny, fragile spark? The fear was a cold knot in my stomach that even the warmth of Kaelin's love could not entirely dissolve. I found myself retreating inward, my hands often resting on my still flat abdomen, as if I could shield the child with my will alone. Kaelin sensed my anxiety. He did not dismiss it with platitudes. Instead, one evening, he led me to the royal archives, to a section I had never visited. A collection of journals and records from past Lunas. "You are not the first Luna to fear for her child," he said softly, pulling a delicate leather-bound journal from a shelf. It belonged to Queen Anya, his great-grandmother. Read her words. She was not Starlight, but she was a great healer, and she feared her magic would harm her babe. I spent the next few days immersed in the lives of the women who had come before me. I read of their fears, their struggles, their triumphs. I learned that my anxiety was not a weakness, but a part of the fierce, protective love of a mother. The realization was a comfort. I was not alone. As my body began to change, so did my connection to the world around me. The starlight power within me, which I had always directed outward, to heal, to defend, to comfort, now turned inward. It became a gentle, nurturing force, cocooning the growing life within me. I could feel a second, tiny, brilliant light kindling beside my own, a consciousness that was both a part of me and entirely its own. This new, inward focus did not diminish my power, it refined it. When I walked among the people now, my presence had a different quality. It was calmer, more grounded. The Omegas, especially the mothers, would smile at me with a new kind of kinship. They would share old remedies, stories of their own pregnancies, their wisdom a gift that helped quiet my fears. One afternoon, while visiting the Starlight Sanctuary, I found Lyra tending to a young, frightened Omega girl who had just discovered she was with child. The girl was trembling, convinced she was not ready, that she would fail. Without a word, Lyra gestured for me to sit beside her. I took the girl's hand. I didn't speak of being Luna or of starlight power. I spoke as one woman to another. I shared my own fears. I told her about the journals, about the universal tremor of doubt that comes with creation. As I spoke, a soft silver-pink light, warm and gentle, emanated from my hands where they rested on my own belly. It wasn't a light I summoned. It was a light that simply was. It enveloped the young Omega, and I felt her fear melt away, replaced by a sense of awe and connection. "You see," Lyra said to the girl, her voice soft, "you are not alone. You are part of a great chain of mothers, all linked by love and courage. That is your strength." In that moment, I understood. My pregnancy was not a vulnerability. It was another form of leadership. It was teaching me a deeper, more intuitive empathy. I was learning to lead not just as a queen, but as a mother to an entire kingdom. The love I felt for my unborn child was expanding, spilling over to encompass every single soul under our protection. When I told Kalen of this revelation that night, he listened, his eyes soft. He placed his large, warm hand over mine on my stomach. "This child," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "is already uniting our pack in ways I never imagined. You are showing them that strength is not hardness, that true power lies in the capacity to love and to nurture." The distant thunder of Draven's ambition no longer seemed as frightening. Let him gather his armies of conquest. We were building an army of a different kind. An army fortified by bonds of family, community, and a future worth protecting. The air growing within me was not just a symbol of our love, but a living promise of the world we were determined to build. A world where every child, every life was cherished. And that was a cause worth any battle. The deep cold of winter settled over Silvervale, but the citadel was warmer than it had ever been. It was a warmth that came from within, from the hearths of shared purpose and the glowing anticipation of new life. My pregnancy progressed, my body rounding, the tiny light within me growing brighter and more distinct through our bond. The fear had not vanished, but it had been joined by a fierce, exhilarating joy. It was on the longest night of the year, the night of the silent moon, that the first true contraction came. It was not a sharp pain, but a deep, rolling wave of pressure that stole my breath. The citadel, which had been preparing for this moment for months, shifted into a quiet, efficient rhythm. I was taken to the same sun-filled rooms where Lyra had recovered, now transformed into a birthing chamber. A fire crackled in the hearth, and the air smelled of lavender and clean linen. Kalen was there, his presence a solid rock in the rising tide of sensation. Lyra was there, her calm, experienced hands a comfort. Ilara, deemed too young to be present, had stationed herself just outside the door, a small, silent sentinel. The labor was a journey unlike any I had ever undertaken. It was a primal, all-consuming process that demanded every ounce of my strength. There were moments of searing pain that made me want to scream, and moments of profound, quiet power that made me feel connected to every mother who had ever lived. Through it all, I did not fight the process. I let my starlight nature guide me. Instead of pushing the pain away, I did what I had learned to do best. I welcomed it. I let it flow through me, understanding it as the necessary force that was bringing my child into the world. My silver light did not flare in brilliant defense. It pulsed in a soft, steady rhythm, a lighthouse in the storm of my body's efforts, guiding my baby forward. Kalen never left my side. He held my hand. His grip firm, his amber eyes never wavering from mine. He did not offer empty words, but his silent strength was a fortress around me. In his gaze, I saw not a king, but a man witnessing the miracle of his mate. His awe and love, a tangible force. As the night wore on, the final, monumental wave of pressure built. The world narrowed to this single defining purpose. "Now, Arya," Lyra whispered, her voice both gentle and commanding. "Now, bring your child into the light." With a final guttural cry that was part pain, part power, and part pure love, I pushed. And then there was a new sound, a strong, clear, indignant wail that filled the room. Louder and more beautiful than any music, a baby's cry. Time seemed to stop. Lyra lifted a tiny, squirming form, pink and perfect, and placed the child on my chest. The warmth of that small body against mine was the most profound sensation I had ever known. Exhaustion vanished, replaced by a wave of love so absolute, so all-encompassing, it felt like my heart would burst. Tears streamed down my face as I looked down at my daughter. She had a dusting of silver hair and when her eyes opened, for a brief, unfocused moment, they were the same brilliant amber as her father's. "A daughter," Kalen breathed, his own voice choked with emotion. He reached out a trembling finger to stroke her cheek. "Our daughter, Dot." A door creaked open and Ilara peeked in, her eyes wide. Is it my sister?" "Come and meet her," I said, my voice weak but overflowing with happiness. Ilara crept in, her awe-struck gaze fixed on the baby. "She's so small," she whispered. Then she looked at me, her face shining. "You did it, Arya!" As the first rays of the winter sun pierced the horizon, banishing the longest night, the news spread through the citadel. The starlight Luna had given birth to a healthy princess. The joy was palpable, a wave of celebration that washed through every hall and every home. Later, as I lay propped up on pillows, our daughter, whom we named Ilara, for the brave little star who had helped save us all. Sleeping peacefully in my arms, Kaelin sat beside us. The early morning light streamed through the window, painting the room in gold. He looked from our daughter's face to mine, his expression one of such profound peace and love that it stole my breath. "It is complete," he said softly. "The circle is whole." I knew what he meant. The cursed, dying king. The rejected, broken Omega. The shadow of betrayal and the threat of war. It all felt like a distant dream. A story from another lifetime. In this sunlit room, with our daughter in my arms and his love surrounding me, that story had found its true ending. It was not an ending of battles won or enemies defeated. It was the quiet, triumphant beginning of a new story. The story of a family. The story of a kingdom built not on fear, but on love. The story of a starlight wolf who had found her home, her mate, and her purpose. Not in grand destiny, but in the simple, extraordinary act of creating a future. I looked down at my daughter, at her perfect, sleeping face, and I made a silent vow. I would spend the rest of my life ensuring her world was one of light, of peace, of belonging. The war was over. The work would continue. But in this moment, there was only this perfect, silent, sun-drenched peace. Our story was not just a legend for the bards to sing. It was a legacy, and it was just beginning. And so, beneath the gentle light of a new dawn, the story of Arya and Kaelin found its truest beginning. Not in a throne room or on a battlefield, but in the quiet of a sunlit chamber, with the promise of the future sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. The rejected Omega had become a queen. The dying king had become a father, and their love had woven a new legend for the Silver Veil Howlers. A legend of hope, of unity, and of a light that no darkness could ever extinguish. But is their hard-won peace truly safe? The warlord Draven gathers his forces in the shadows, and the world beyond their borders is still a dangerous place. The story of the Starlight Luna is far from over. Did Arya's power fully return after the birth of her daughter? How will Kaelin defend his kingdom from this new threat? And what destiny awaits the little princess? Born of both starlight and alpha blood, if you want to join them for the next chapter of their epic journey, then you know what to do. Smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single upload. And ring the bell icon so you'll be the first to know when part 2 arrives. And tell me in the comments below, what was your favorite moment? Are you #Team Arya and #Team Kaelin? What do you think will happen next? I read every single one. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, may your own story be filled with light